Good morning and welcome to Mental Health Matters with me, Dr Audrey Tang. My co-host is Judith Crosier, and today we have a very special guest. We're going to be talking about the menopause, but we have got Anita Powell with us. Now, she is the UN Woman UK Volunteer Delegate for the Commission on the Status of Women. She's an engagement advocate, she's a speaker and a menopause activist. So who better than to unpack this very complex topic with us than Anita Powell? Let's head over to the main studio. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
I'm going to start with a recent post on LinkedIn where you speak about the menopause support falling short, and you have stated that it feels like menopause support is something that can be managed, but it can only be managed with those with the money to manage it. So what are the key issues that we are missing when it comes to that conversation about menopause today?
It's great that we talk about menopause.
True.
The conversation of menopause has definitely evolved over the past 5 years. Just 5 years. Even though we've been menopausal since the beginning of time. 5 years, the acceleration in the UK has been massive, and that's really great. And it's been great that women have driven that conversation. However, the conversation has been aired by women who predominantly have money, and that's influenced menopause. So what's happened is that a lot of women who have money, who've been fighting for menopause, they've made massive impacts, like celebrities and whatever, but because they don't really rely on the National Health Service, the National Health Service haven't really been called, or their inadequacies haven't really been addressed. So what's happened is, in the menopause space, there's a massive increase of private menopause care, and the National Health Service is going very slowly. And therefore, women who predominantly rely on the National Health Service, actually, they haven't advanced as much, whereas people who can afford private care, or who can afford to be pushed into private care, their level of care has zoomed. And they have so many more options.
That says so much about healthcare in general, though, not just menopause.
And the change in healthcare. Because at the end of the day, you know, I sense that there's a drive to get people to rely on private healthcare.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. But the reality is that if you're a working woman who's struggling to pay your utility bills and feed your kids, you'll never be able to realistically afford good private healthcare. And those women are the backbone of society with regards to work, especially organisations that heavily rely on zero contract workers, part-time workers, you know, nurses, shop people who do admin, people work in supermarkets. Those are the ones who can't necessarily afford to spend £300 on private menopause care.
And also, when you talk about these hugely important job roles here, if you are, because women are leaving the workforce because of menopause symptoms and not being able to manage them, and lack of support from the organisations. So if you're losing that level of experience in that role, your service is going to just go as well, isn't it? It's going to have that repercussion.
Not only will they have the issues around services, women are the backbone of many things. So we're the backbone with regards to families, we're the backbone with regards to community work, we're backbone with regards to a lot of organisations. We're not paid our value. You know, even carers are predominantly women for our elderly. So we're not paid our value, but actually we are part of the foundation. And as we evolve as a globalised and important economy, we need to support our foundation. Because all we're doing is disabling people who are part of the building blocks of who we are as a society.
That's beautiful. That's really not only just poetic, but so fundamental to what society needs to know. And sort of, okay, you've got these women who maybe they don't have the finances, but they do want to speak out and share their experiences, but they're still somehow being gagged. They're still stopped because there's still a stigma around menopause. What are some of those key myths and misunderstandings that we all need to be able to address?
I think part of the stigma has come about because as a society we've evolved and we haven't really thought about it much. And I'll explain the reason why. Once upon a time, most people passed away in their 50s.
Yes.
But the average age of menopause is 51.
Yes.
So actually, for possibly centuries, menopause was non-existent because it happened during end of life.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a thought.
That is a thought, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have, as a society, haven't evolved with menopause dialogue as part of our female experience, our lived experience, because for a very long time we didn't live beyond 51.
So it wasn't even...
It was an issue.
Sure.
So I think that's how we've evolved.
Yeah.
Now we live up to 30 years beyond menopause, and we actually spend a lot of our working life and our lived adult life in menopause, the dialogue has become more important. But because there was an absence before, people, especially sexist people, think, look, we were able to go in fields and be menopausal. Why do you need to talk about it? But that's not the reason why we didn't talk about it before. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So
100%.
Wow.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They weren't even going in fields to be menopausal.
They weren't alive.
Dead.
Literally. Yeah, they were buried.
Gosh.
That's
It is actually blown my mind. And it's true,
Yeah.
and it's true, but I never thought about it.
Yeah. So we've evolved, and also when it comes to healthcare, healthcare has predominantly been driven by men for men.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And the reason why I say this is because the only areas where men have really studied female healthcare have been when we can give birth to their children.
When it relates to them.
Relates to them, yes. That's the only area they've really focused on with regards to women.
Yeah.
And what I've discovered since exploring menopause is that our bodies are so complicated because we give birth to children.
Yeah.
Way more complicated than men's bodies.
Yeah.
But medical people haven't studied it because beyond having children, they didn't care.
Yeah. That's shocking, isn't it? That shows how little value women have been afforded, actually.
Yes.
That's outrageous.
We're just incubators for their children.
That's outrageous.
So almost like once the children have been had, then there's no real use in society for women anymore? Is that
we
the message?
We look after their children, we look after their heirs.
Wow.
Yeah,
So we give birth to their heirs and we look after their heirs. And then once we become a certain age, then they go and seek younger women and then continue their...
It's a scary thought. Yeah. Wow. So you work as an activist, like a proper activist, to get the conversations out there about this, which is amazing because you do it on behalf of all of us. What are the conversations that we need to be having?
Well, some of the stuff I've just mentioned.
Yes.
I mean, you look like very intelligent, sensible women, but I've just told you things you didn't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Which is why we want you on this show. But you're right. You are right.
Yes.
Because we don't think about those things enough.
No.
And with the current dialogue, we're not actually given the opportunity even to consider it, because it's almost a bit like, well, this is the menopause conversation, go and get HRT because Davina McCall says so, and then that's it.
Yeah, and it's way more
all we're
complicated.
Yes, it is.
I mean, the things I don't do medical care around menopause. I facilitate conversations, like I've facilitated here now.
Yes.
And I also talk about things like diversity and all kinds of things which affect menopause and affects your lived experience. So I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was talking about how your ACE score, your adverse childhood experience, sometimes if you've got a high ACE score, and you go through menopause and it affects you emotionally, it's amplified.
Yes.
You know, and you talk about HRT, but actually there's loads of women who are dealing with emotional trauma which relates to their childhood, and then they've had a hormonal change.
Yeah. HRT's not going to be enough for that.
Well, they need more psychological support as well as biological support. And they need to understand that as well.
Yes.
They need to understand that they've got lived trauma.
Yeah.
And then the hormone, the workings of the body have amplified that. And that also leads to something called allostatic load. An allostatic load is the wear and tear of your body in relation to stress. And the allostatic load, if you have a high score, it can shorten your life, increase diabetes, increase high blood pressure, and a lot of women, especially women from diverse communities, they are more likely to suffer it. So women actually women, black and Asian communities are more likely to suffer from diabetes, blah, 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 and menopause symptoms, and they think it's because of lifetime of additional stress.
Yes, of course.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Because there's generational traumas as well, which come into that. Not only things like migrating and a huge life change, and also in many ways, so my parents migrated, but they all like to fit in.
Yes.
And that's quite a lot of pressure of suppressing everything. I don't want to cause trouble, so I'm not going to ask. Yes. And it's that oppression that they put on themselves, I think, causes extra trouble.
So that lifetime of that oppression and stress then might cause the physical symptoms you're talking about.
Yes.
Which
and
menopause then
exacerbates. That's
it shortens your life.
That's right. Yeah. We need to talk about that more.
Yeah, definitely. So that's only one of the conversations, and there's many. Wow, thank you. And if people are going to their GPs because they're not feeling right because of the menopause, and what can we do if we feel unheard by our GPs?
I mean, I run a peer support group in Bedford, and one of the things that the group helps women do is empower them to have that dialogue. Yeah, and also to learn information. So they don't necessarily have to learn information about their menopause. They can learn it about other people's menopause.
Yeah.
So I've had different speakers come in who've spoken about cancer and menopause and endometriosis and menopause. That's not their experience.
Yeah.
But they're now empowered to not only have conversations with work colleagues, sisters, mothers, and just increasing that knowledge of menopause gives women the confidence to question what their doctor says to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, they're really interesting and really important.
We're going to keep you with us, Anita, and we'll be back just after this.
Hey there, I'm Diane Forster, host of I Have Today, where we talk about the art of intentional living. Our show is on the Fresh Takes channel on Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific. So if you're ready to be inspired, empowered, and educated and learn how to live the I Have Today way, then tune in. Hope to see you there.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. We have Anita Powell with us, and we are unpacking the conversations that need to be had about menopause. Now, what brought you to work in this field in the first place, Anita?
It was an accident. I did accidentally fall into it. I mean, the thing is, I do loads of work with regards to community engagement and community support, and I've done that for many years. So I've worked on all kinds of projects working with different communities who experience disadvantage. In my 40s, I went to a TED Talk in London, and I can't remember her name now, but there was a speaker who talked about infertility. And she taught me about infertility like I'm telling you about menopause. Yeah. And one thing she also said was every woman should know about the experience of menopause for their mother and grandmother, because it's an indicator, not a guarantee, an indicator of their menopause experience.
Yeah. Okay.
And I thought, oh, okay. So I went away, as Anita does. I did some research, and I realised, oh my word, menopause is big. I think prior to that TED Talk, I thought menopause was like a light switch. You literally woke up one morning.
And here you are.
Yeah, that's it. I didn't realise that it can last, for some women, up to like 12 years.
Yes.
I mean, some people it's like 5, some people it's 10, some people it's 12. Some people have lifetime symptoms once they have the deterioration of hormones.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, it's not a light switch then. And at the time when I was discovering all this, and I was kind of like blown by all this information. And also I didn't know what perimenopause was.
Yes, because that's the bit that most of us are probably living. I mean, I know that I'm going through that right now.
Yeah, and I didn't know what perimenopause was.
No, I'd never heard of it until I was there.
To me, it was just menopause. That's it. So light switch, you wake up, you get a period. Hey, I can wear white jeans. Yay! That's it.
It's so true, and I bet you viewers out there are thinking the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. And at the time, I was doing a project where I was working with quite a few women who had been off work for a long time, and I was helping them get them back into work. So they'd been long-term unemployed due to having children. Oh. And some of them were in their 40s. Okay. I kind of noticed that there was loads of dialogue around kind of struggle, like health, I'm tired, I'm miserable, anxiety. And I also noticed that with my peers, it was a similar dialogue. It was different in your 40s than your 30s. In your 30s, it's about careers, job, getting married, buying a house. Yeah. In your 40s, I'm tired, I hate my partner, I'm aching, I hate my job. There was just, I sensed greater anxiety in your 40s. And I realised that there was a biological connection. It wasn't just about ageing, it was about a hormone change which contributed to that dialogue.
And that hormone change can often be overlooked because when you're presenting to your doctor, you're just stressed, you can get dismissed. And so you've worked within the communities, you are really encouraging this conversation about menopause, but I think we are still falling short when it comes to understanding different cultures' experience of menopause. You touched on it when you talked about ACEs, when you talked about adverse childhood experiences. How do the conversations, or how must the conversations, and therefore the solutions, differ when it comes to understanding cultural sensitivity?
One thing I've learned about through doing menopause stuff, because I've learned loads of stuff through doing menopause stuff, is that even though I sit here with these lovely ladies, we've got 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth, hopefully, 1 mouth, but we all look ethnically different on the outside. And what I've discovered with regards to menopause is that sometimes internally we are different, and that can have an impact on research in medicine and health outcomes.
Yes, but of course, if research in medicine is predominantly white,
and white European, that we don't necessarily accommodate the diverse differences internally, and because it's not researched. So actually, some ethnicities respond differently to medicine than others, but it's not included in the research. Even if the research is done in, say, for instance, China, the default patient is European.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's so wrong.
Yeah. So one thing I've learned is actually some of the responses women experience with regards to diversity, it's just that we're not researched enough. It's just purely medical. It's nothing to do with culture. And we know that there are differences in different ethnicities. So I think it's China or Japan, they have what's considered to be the best response. They have low menopause symptoms. I don't know if you've heard of this. So out of all the ethnicities, if you, I'm not sure, it's Oriental country, and I do apologise, I should know this.
We can Google this, we can look this up, because I'm really interested now.
So apparently they're less likely to suffer with what's called vasomotor symptoms, and vasomotor symptoms are hot flushes. Things around the stuff to do with the hypothalamus, like low libido, they're less likely to. And it could be diet, because they have a high soya consumption in their diet, and they eat things like seaweed and whatever. So it could be that their diet consists, because soya is considered to be one of those foods that are, God, this is the name, my menopause brain's kicked in. Phytogen foods. So certain foods are considered to be really good with regards to managing a certain chemical which has a similar response. Similar is not even the identical word to estrogen.
I've heard that to do with soya.
Yes, I have as well, and apricots and things like that.
Yes, and quinoa.
Yes, that's really,
But also, Asian women are culturally likely, they're more likely to have a lower BMI.
So
that
may also affect.
Yes, because the more fat you have in your body, apparently you produce additional hormones. There's hormones related to fat.
Okay.
So so it's all complicated. So actually, it could be the diet. It could be because your bodies are slimmer, that actually you have less hormones, which make it less complicated to manage the hormone imbalance. It's all.
But either way, it just shows how important it is to have the research on the different nationalities and ethnicities, which actually brings me quite nicely onto your UN work.
Yeah.
It's the Commission on the Status of Women. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it related in the summer. What the UN do every year, they do conferences all over the world. They do conferences in London, and they invite people to become volunteers. And what you do, is quite simple really. What you do is you become a volunteer and you engage in a dialogue with regards to women's experience all over the world. And then what you're supposed to do is take away what you've learned in whatever job you do. And it's about understanding the journeys of women for not only where you live, but understanding the journeys of women as a whole.
Yes.
And you incorporate it in whatever you do with regards to activism and support. So some people, because they have loads of volunteers each year, and they have loads of workshops and stuff, but it's also about understanding the struggles in different countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, carrying it with you when you go about doing what you need to do to support women. Yes,
because again, it reveals intersectionalities and barriers that may not be obvious to you in your own lived experience. That's fascinating. I think it's probably something that we can all look at applying for. I think that's something important.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And can you tell us about the Menopause Alliance?
Menopause Alliance, that's what I formulated in Bedford. It originally was called the Bedford Menopause Group. And then, was it 2020? We got a Bedford Menopause Clinic run by the National Health Service. So I kind of felt that I shouldn't have a similar name.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
So I created the Menopause Alliance. And the Menopause Alliance is really a peer support group. Because as I say, I'm not medical. So even though I talk about menopause and I'm passionate about the topic, I'm not medical. And I tell people I'm not medical, but I advocate for good medical healthcare.
Yes.
So I support GPs and nurses and anyone who works in the field medically. And the reason why I think it's important that I highlight that is because loads of people now talk about being menopause coaches and menopause this, and they have no medical experience, and they don't signpost to medical people, and they actually don't want the National Health Service to grow because they earn money from being a menopause coach.
So people pay the money even though they're not medically trained?
Yes.
Okay. Right.
Because it's a selling point. It's the empowering women coach. It's the it's really frustrating, and we've talked about this on other shows, so I'm not going to go on about that, but I'm glad you pointed that out because I think that's essential.
So I even though I sit with women, and I always tell people my knowledge around menopause is quite good, but it's still Google level. And that's the level I am, And if I don't understand something, I go and I Google it, and I go to a reliable source. But I'm passionate about women getting good medical health care. And I think there is a definite difference. And I think a lot of women spend a lot of money going to menopause coaches, and they don't even have a GCSE in biology.
That's really
they barely have a coaching qualification. You know, so
I didn't even know there were such things, but yes, I sure will.
Oh, you get those 24-hour coaching diplomas and then you call yourself a coach of anything.
Oh my word.
So we'll do another show on
that. I think we need to.
So I don't call myself a coach.
No,
I don't
provide a completely different service.
But at the same time, I talk about menopause a lot. And sometimes people, like I'm a paid speaker with the topic. So sometimes I go to events and I'm down as a menopause coach. And the first thing I say is, I'm not a menopause coach. And I don't advocate for menopause coaches. It's healthcare, people who invested in years of education, in specialism, and then it's me talking about engaging with healthcare.
It's
so
advocacy.
Very different.
Advocacy,
Very different
really
from
important.
being the coach and telling people what to do. You're saying you need to go to this person for them to tell you how to do it.
And I empower them to have those different conversations so that when they go to a professional, that they can have a conversation with some back knowledge. And if they don't understand the professional, they can come back to me and maybe I can help them.
Okay, that makes sense. That sounds like a fantastic service. And what do you do then if you have signposted somebody to a medical professional, but that medical professional fobs them off or tells them just to get over it or just get some more sleep or whatever it might be? How do you then help the person that's kind of been fobbed off potentially?
Well, we break down the conversation that they've had with their professional, because sometimes the professional doesn't listen. And the thing is, because there's a lack of knowledge as women with regards to our healthcare, we sometimes don't have the dialogue to fully express ourselves in that 5 or 10 minute appointment.
Yes.
Sometimes it's about educating the women to have that dialogue. Yeah, and once they have that dialogue, then a doctor is more, or GP is more likely to take them seriously because they're talking a language that they can relate to. So going in and saying to a doctor, I feel low and I can't sleep, a doctor's automatic response is probably antidepressants.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's their general response. But actually, if you say, well, also, I'm hot at night and my anxiety level's a lot greater, and I think it goes beyond just feeling low. I think there's a biological issue, and it may be related to the menopause. Then a doctor has to view you differently, because a lot of women, especially historically, were given antidepressants by doctors rather than looking at their hormones.
Yes.
Yeah. And there was a couple of reasons why they were doing that. One, doctors weren't trained on that. The patient didn't have dialogue to also tell them the other symptoms. But also doctors get a financial incentive if they talk about certain topics and prescribe to certain topics. And depression gives them they get financial gain from more people on antidepressants because they're focusing on that health problem.
Right.
Whereas on menopause you don't.
Oh my goodness, okay.
There's so much in that. There's so much in that. No, we're keeping you with us. We've got to take a break, but we'll be back just after this.
A world without the arts is one without confidence, creativity and community, and yet funding has been reduced every year. Arts programmes have been shown to benefit social inclusion and well-being, particularly for marginalised groups, with projects fostering a sense of belonging, cultivating mutual understanding and breaking down social barriers and isolation. Participation in arts programmes can help boost confidence and open doors to opportunities that may otherwise be inaccessible. Click Arts Foundation offers grants up to £2,000 for grassroots arts projects twice a year, with our community arts experience trustees meticulously scoring each project on impact and sustainability. To date, we have supported craft and visual arts projects, dance, drumming for well-being, and preservation of heritage and culture. If you share our passion, not just for maintaining the arts themselves, but contributing to the many benefits it can bring, please consider making a donation to Click Arts Foundation registered charity.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. Anita, you have been mind-blowing so far on this topic, and this is really, really important. So let's now go to perimenopause, and this is something that is still misunderstood. We were saying ourselves, until we got there, we just didn't really understand what it was, and perimenopause can start very early as well. What are the misunderstandings that we really do need to bring out into the open?
I mean, I think I mentioned earlier about the light switch thing. That needs to go. It really needs to go. And understanding about perimenopause, it's a decline of hormones. And it's the decline of your estrogen, progesterone, and your testosterone. And we don't often talk about the testosterone.
No, in women,
yeah. But actually, the testosterone women have, even though it's considered to be a male drug, and I do that, I'll explain in a second why I do that, is actually important with regards to energy levels, mental health, and our libido. Yeah. So if you have low testosterone as a woman, it can affect your sexual drive, and can affect things around your vagina area as well. So a lot of women have issues around that area because they've got low testosterone. So when you're going through the perimenopause, it's not just about also the decline. Sometimes you have symptoms because all these hormones are at different levels.
Of course.
And also they fluctuate up and down, like that. So first of all, don't go out and spend a lot of money on menopause tests, because that's another thing. There's a whole industry created on menopause tests because they're unreliable, because your hormones fluctuate daily.
So it will only show you on that particular day?
No, at that moment.
Right.
Your hormone levels could be totally different 6 hours later.
Gosh.
So they're unreliable. So even the doctors don't recommend them. The doctors go by symptoms. Yeah. And so there's kind of 3 rough areas that they talk about in relation to symptoms. So the neurological areas, which are about brain fog, anxiety, and just all stuff to relate to the brain and feeling low and whatever. Then there's the vasomotor symptoms, which are connected to like your hypothalamus kind of, if you know all the stuff
Balance,
and everything like that, and that also has stuff to do with your body heat regulation.
It's regulating how hot you feel, so the hot flushes come.
Hot flush, night sweats, all that stuff, and also emotional lows as well. And then there's the sexual element, so it's like low libido, and a lot of people suffer from vaginal atrophy. I can't say it.
And that's a horrible word, actually. Atrophy.
Everything is a horrible word.
It's all closing in on itself.
Lovely.
Just a horrible description. It wouldn't be like that if a woman had named it.
Think about it. It's called menopause. We wouldn't even named it menopause if a woman had designed it. Men designed it, so they put them on pause. I mean, come on. Anything's about men. It's terrible.
It's true. No, you're right. Oh God.
So anyway, I hate that. Anyway, so when it comes to symptoms, it's roughly those 3 areas, and even though you can suffer symptoms in all those 3 areas, sometimes women's symptoms are focused on just an area. Yeah. So sometimes you go to women and they don't suffer from hot flushes, they don't have night sweats, but they have the areas around there, and they might, and that's just, they have all the stuff connected to low libido and sexual. Some people it's just the mental side. They forget everything. So it's about understanding that that's what you will go through, and it may last between 5 to 10 years. And it's about adjusting your life to understand that self-care doesn't become an option, it becomes a necessity, which I'm having to learn, because women, generally older women, we're taught for years not to care about ourselves, because we've got a family and a husband to care for, and the world to care for.
Yes.
So that's the type of thing you do.
I think that's really important, because I think that actually answers my next question, which was what do we need to look for? So it's the mental, it's the sexual, and the heat regulation and regulation of the body. Those are the 3 key areas to focus on, and we may not get all of them, but it's just worth knowing if we're getting them in different
There's
areas.
About 50 symptoms, but understanding
they come in those 3 areas. That's brilliant. So slightly moving to the side on the topic around periods, it's still about 8 years to get a diagnosis of something of endometriosis and adenomyosis as well. I mean, why is it still such a problem to get these sorts of diagnoses around periods, around women's problems, around that kind of...
I mean, it comes back to what I said. They just didn't research anything which didn't result in their children. So even though these are part of our makeup of our body, and we've been around a very long time, because it had no connection to pregnancy, it just wasn't an issue. It wasn't an issue. They didn't care.
It's just, it just seems outrageous, for want of a better word.
Absolutely.
Because, if you don't have children, you're still on this earth for hopefully 70, 80 years, whatever.
And making a contribution.
Yeah, it's making a huge contribution. So shouldn't that be as important as anyone who has children, which obviously is really important to keep society going. But, there's so many things in that, isn't there?
Huge.
Gosh. So on that theme then, how can we talk to our family and friends about periods and about potential of something like endometriosis and that sort of women's problems, if you like, as it's called. How do we talk?
Stop calling the women's problems, don't we?
That was biggest women problems in man, but let's just say, I don't want to come across as a man hater. Sorry, but I mean the thing about women's issues, it is about education for women, because as I said, in my 40s I learned loads of stuff about menopause, and that's the 3rd stage of my life. I was already in it. Why should I be learning about it?
Yes. Why don't they teach it at school? They teach about periods, but they take the boys away, and then they teach the girls about periods. I don't know if they still do that, but that's what they've always done.
So it's just conversation. And I think as well, because there's a reluctancy within the medical world, women do need to talk to themselves, and they need to advocate and empower themselves in the dialogue.
Yes, it is about having conversations like this.
Exactly. And then, on that, boys in school, and I've heard them say it,
yeah,
probably
I have.
We both worked at secondary school, we don't need to know about periods because we don't have them. So how do we kind of counter that?
It is about having conversation. I mean, even for me, and I talk to everyone about menopause, but it was still a challenge to talk to my children about menopause.
Was it?
Yeah, because I culturally haven't been taught to talk about menopause.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So professionally, I can sit and talk to you about anything.
Yeah.
Because professionally, I have an understanding, and you're similar age to me, and I'm used to that. Yeah. But then going home, and at the time, talking to my 12-year-old son, when I wasn't spoken to about it, that was like, oh, how do I do that?
Yeah, no, that's a good point, isn't it?
How do I do that? So it was challenging for me, and it's about making that cultural difference, and making everyone talk about it. I mean, now they talk about it on TV and adverts.
I hear it on the radio all the time now.
Yeah. When I first started talking about menopause, that was the best way to clear a room.
Really?
You said menopause, and everyone disappeared. And if I said menopause, because I've got a loud voice, if I said menopause, the person always responded with, "Oh, menopause, that's what you're working. Okay, I'm just going toilet. I'll see you soon."
It's unbelievable, but it's actually really true.
Yeah.
It's getting better now, because now what you get is you'll talk about menopause, and there'll be men in there, and they'll want to look woke, and they'll all go,
I've got a wife, she's going through it.
Yeah. And that's about it though. But they will sit, but it's no dialogue, and it's just kind of closed down.
Whereas before they would have walked out.
Yes. It's just as bad as walking out though, isn't it? Because they're not engaged.
True. Well, hopefully it will just get better and better. And interestingly, the people I've heard on the radio talk about it are men.
Which is good.
Which is good.
You know what? It needs to happen.
Yeah.
Because even though no one has done a formal research of it, the average age for a woman to go through menopause in the UK is 51. But I think early 50s is the largest, number where women instigate divorce.
How interesting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and one of the issues about menopause is people question their relationships. Because they're going through emotional trauma and anxiety, and their partners who doesn't understand what they're going through is not supporting them.
Yeah.
So men need to talk about it because it's ending marriages, as well as people go through career changes, and so bosses are losing important women within their business.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's such a huge. It's a bigger subject than I realised at the beginning of this. It's such a massive subject. So obviously you said, we just need to have the conversations, and that's what you suggest that we do to people in our lives about it.
Everywhere, really.
Yeah.
Everywhere, and it's just understanding that we need to make it part of our dialogue in the same way as we do pregnancy. Yeah. So it's not a negative narrative. It's just it's a change. It's like adolescence, pregnancy. It's
just another part of life.
It's part of our life. And also, as well, we don't talk about this as well, but men go through their own version of it. Yeah. Because what happens is their testosterone decline. I mean, I talked to you about the decline in women with testosterone. So I have met a man, and even though I think he used the wrong word, he says, "Oh, I'm on HRT." And that's what he said. And what it is his testosterone has dropped to such a low level, he needed help. So he's been put on testosterone in the same way as women put on testosterone. Yeah. So it is a hormone replacement, but I don't know technically. And so he was explaining to me how he was struggling in memory, and he had hot flushes, and he was struggling with stuff. He went to his doctor, and they somehow checked his testosterone. I don't know how they did it. And now he takes testosterone, so he struggles, and that's called andropause, and that's the male version of menopause, but it's less symptomatic, and it's not as complex as menopause. But they go through a decline in hormones.
Yeah,
and I bet that's not really well known either. That men have their own version of it. Yeah. Well, not even their own version, because it's the same. It's a drop in.
Yeah, it just doesn't have the same effect as in women on most men. I'm sure a lot of men do struggle with it, but it can affect your libido and everything, and energy.
So interesting. Thank you. So how do we learn more about you and the work that you do?
I don't know. I suppose follow me on social media.
Yeah. So on
Twitter.
Where do we find you?
On LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, I think I am Anita Powell. On Twitter, I am Anita Powell.
Okay.
Just look for Anita Powell.
Anita Powell.
Brilliant. We will do that. We're going to keep you though, because we want to hear your top tips on keeping this conversation going, and we're going to head over to Business Boost. Today's Business Boost comes from research that was done by equalityhumanrights.com, so you can go to their website to have a look at this. And this is about menopause symptoms and how they affect women at work. And they say that research by the CIPD, Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, found that 2/3 of working women between the ages of 40 and 60 were experiencing menopausal symptoms or perimenopausal symptoms, and they mostly were having a negative effect on their work. 79% said they were less able to concentrate. 68% said they experienced more stress. Nearly half of them said they felt less patient with their clients and their colleagues. And 46% felt less physically able to carry out work tasks. It's notable, based on what our guest has also said, that those are largely the cognitive symptoms that people will express at work. So just be aware of that and don't think, oh, well, they're just talking about cognitive or mental symptoms, that it's not menopause. So be mindful. And there are legal obligations. Under the Equality Act 2010, workers are protected from discrimination, harassment and victimisation on the basis of protected characteristics, including disability, age and sex. And if menopausal symptoms have a long-term and substantial impact on a woman's ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities, they can be considered a disability. And if menopause symptoms amount to a disability, you are under a legal obligation to make reasonable adjustments. So do look into a policy about menopause. ACAS is very good for that, and they have a whole section on menopause at work. It is something that affects everybody. It is important that we take care of it in the workplace. We are at the tail end of our show. It's the menopause part of our show. No, sorry. But it's been fascinating. We could talk to you all day.
Yeah.
You have just been so, well, joyful and such a wonderful presence to have on set, but so interesting.
Yeah, really informative.
The topics you've brought up are things that we need to talk about a lot more and need to think about a lot more. I mean, certainly for me, I'd never even heard that men went through something and it has a name as well.
Yes, I didn't know.
That's really interesting. Do you mind reminding me?
Andropause.
Andropause. That's something I've never come across before, and that's really important. And you're absolutely right. Whilst we do think it's the light switch, because that's what I used to think it was, how many other people out there are still thinking the same thing? And the other thing that you said, which really resonated with me, was the differences in culture, but how we're still only researching white European people, women, if that, sometimes, and it's small samples, it doesn't generalise, and so on. That's just amazing. What have you taken? I mean, there's so much.
I think just the fact that perimenopause and menopause itself lasts so long. I didn't even realise that it can last. You said 12 years, or even for the rest of your, not for the rest of your life.
Some women have symptoms forever.
Wow. Once it starts.
Yes,
yeah.
So it could be some women still occasionally get hot flushes in their 60s plus.
Okay.
But that might just be it. Everything else is fine.
Yeah, that was kind of one of the biggest things. The other one was the lack of research. Same as you, Audrey. And I just think it's really shocking that all cultural groups and ethnic groups are not researched in the same way. That needs to change.
Definitely. So we are going to hand it over to you, Anita, to give us your top tips on how we need to carry on this conversation.
Well, I think it's important to carry the conversation everywhere. I'm not saying you should go around and just scream menopause when you walk around the supermarket, because you get taken away. I don't think you should do that. But I think it's a conversation that needs to be happened as part of your everyday life. I mean, the things that I've learnt about menopause is you have to incorporate self-care as part of your... It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. And I as a 50-odd-year-old woman, I'm having to learn to be focused on my self-care because I'm not used to it. And I think a lot of women have to relearn how to look after themselves. When they're 18 and, flighty around and whatever, they do it fine. And then they become parents, and then they become wives and whatever, and partners. And they put themselves second or third place. And menopause, you need to put yourself first with regards to your healthcare. And if you don't, it can shorten your life, because menopause can contribute towards poor heart health, it can contribute towards osteoporosis, it can contribute towards a long-term depression. I mean, it has even an impact on fertility for obvious reasons. There's loads of things that can have a negative outcome if you don't manage your hormone change. So it's important that we have dialogue in work, home, between peers, talk to each other, and also ensure that the media has representation of the female story of menopause. I think that that's really important.
Absolutely incredible. Thank you so much, Anita. It's been such a pleasure having you on set.
It really has.
I'm Anita Powell. This is the website to follow, and do have a healthy week.